Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the first of probably very many media interviews that Yoshi-P is doing regarding Final Fantasy XVI. When they initially unveiled the Dominance trailer not too long ago, in Yoshi-P's comments he said that they would be releasing a lot of media interviews over the next several months. And well, this is the first of many. We also know one popped up on the Japanese PlayStation blog very briefly, so we're probably going to be seeing a flood of these and videos on these on the channel and all that good stuff. However, this first one was posted by the official Square Enix website, and it just goes over a few basic details, some things we can look forward to, and specifically Yoshi-P's vision on Final Fantasy XVI. So without further ado, let's dive into it. It's hard to imagine a more highly anticipated game than Final Fantasy XVI. You hear that, Starfield? We're calling you out on that one. Planned for summer 2023, all the things we already know, and hey, this video is age restricted. If you're young, don't watch it. Real probably left you excited, but with more burning questions than he freaked himself. The talented team is working hard to deliver an epic experience that new players and fans alike will love, but producer Yoshi-P Naoki Yoshida generously agreed to take some time to answer some of our queries and share some additional thoughts about the game. So, question number one. Hello, Yoshida-san. You've previously described the story of Final Fantasy XVI as being like an intense roller coaster. What did you mean by that? My idea for Final Fantasy XVI was to bring to life the feelings players of playing in the lead in an epic motion picture, the same thing I felt when I played through the original Final Fantasy. That says a lot about your creative mind, because when I played the original Final Fantasy, I definitely envisioned some things, but I never imagined playing the lead in an epic motion picture. So, good creative vision. To give players a breathtaking experience through a combination of expansive storyline, dramatic cutscenes, and real-time battles, including gargantuan-scale icon clashes, all seamlessly connected. It's a white-knuckle roller coaster ride in video game form. So this is pretty straightforward. There's not much for us to extrapolate from this first little Q&A, and I suspect we'll probably see a lot of that across the various interviews. You know, I'm sure we're going to be seeing almost that exact question and answer across many of them, like I said. So why have you chosen an action-based battle system for this game, and what reaction do you hope to inspire? This is an important question. Everybody knows that the mainline Final Fantasy games have been moving away from turn-based combat for quite some time now. Even some of the earlier titles that still did use a version of turn-based combat were trying to get away from the slower stipulations of very, very classic turn-based combat. But as we've seen, it's moved on full action in this game. I mean, it has the combat director from Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma and Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Yeah, it's in pretty good hands, but people are still wondering, why don't they make a turn-based one? So, first of all, each new entry in Final Fantasy series brings with it a new world, new characters, and a new battle system. Mostly true. We get a lot of different suggestions from fans about what they want to see, but unfortunately, it isn't possible for us to satisfy everyone. He's talking to turn-based players right there. There are also a lot of younger gamers out there who might not have ever heard of Final Fantasy game before. Yeah, trying to attract not just the classic crowd, but also making sure that the franchise can continue to grow and be appealing to newer gamers as well. With Final Fantasy XVI, we wanted to appeal to as wide a range of gamers as possible by setting the story in a classic fantasy world that's reminiscent of the early Final Fantasy games, but combining that with fast-paced, real-time action. I still wonder if we're going to get some really like steampunky-esque stuff at any point. Even the original Final Fantasy game has an air fortress with mechs all over the place. So I'm wondering if it ever gets into that point in Valisthea. We have a comprehensive support system in place for players who aren't too confident with action games, so even if action isn't your thing, I hope you'll give it a try. This is something I hope they expand on in the other interviews, or even in some sort of follow-up post or, information dump, because I think there is some concern over whether or not a player can really approach this game. Now, if you've played Final Fantasy 15 or Strangers of Paradise, you'll know that those games aren't particularly hard, especially if you don't want them to be. So this game, instead, talking about having a support system in place, makes me wonder if it's just something as simple as difficulty settings, or if they're actually going to be incorporating something like Final Fantasy 15's slower mode, its wait mode, so that way you can make some more important decisions and approach combat in a more tactical style way, as opposed to constantly be going and going and going. Really want to hear more about whatever that is. One other reason we went with an action-based battle system this time around is to push the boundaries of what a Final Fantasy game can be and expand the range of possibilities for developers who pick up the reins of the series after us. People see that and they're like, no, make this one, and then you guys make another one. Don't give it to, no, just make the next one. It's fine. But I get what they're saying. Just reminding everyone like, hey, there's no blueprint for this. You know, watch what we do, see how different it is, and know that you have a little bit of room to explore. Summons, or icons, are an important part of the game. What was so appealing about the element of the Final Fantasy series? The icons of Philistia are similar to weapons of mass destruction in the real world. Each nation has one dwelling inside of a human host who inherits their power by particular roles. So it's very interesting about this. Each nation has one. We have seen the Dominance trailer, and it suggests that is not the truth. We can name at least 2 coming from a few different nations. So clearly something else is going on here, because his statement directly contradicts things that we actually already know. Very curious to see what that means story-wise. These hosts are known as dominants, and each dominant has the power to physically transform themselves into their icon. As the ether provided by the mother crystals begins to fade, and the nations of Philistia wage war to seize their rivals' crystals for their own, they resort to sending their icons against each other on the field of war. So, many of us have known that the true threat in Philistia is something called the Blight. It is something that is only mentioned a couple of times, but it is listed as a major threat even on the official site. And the mother crystals losing their power is something that is also reflected in the trailers. So this leads us to believe that not everyone in the game is really an enemy, per se, but it also makes me think back to the initial trailer where they said the legacy of the crystals has what was it? has what's it called? Written history, whatever. You know the quote. I don't know it off the top of my head. I should have prepared that before this. Has shaped our history for long enough. The theory was that was actually coming from a villain and not Clive himself. But at the same time, it's a quote that's right next to Clive on the official Final Fantasy XVI Uniqlo shirt. So if anything, it's a big red herring line, because it just seems like the whole mother crystal thing, it's not something we would want to be against necessarily, but this Blight, or this true villain that's trying to let the Blight kind of take over the world, seems to believe this on some level. Otherwise, it wouldn't be pushing this agenda that appears to be underneath, what Clive's true revenge plot is really all about. So, really interested to learn more about that. The main storyline of Final Fantasy XVI centers around the dominants and their icons. The reason we wanted to give the icons pride of place in the game is to deliver a unique experience where you're controlling these enormous summons and using them to battle against each other. It's a Final Fantasy first. I mean, kind of Final Fantasy X. You basically did that with Yuna, but I get what they mean. Obviously, not an action game. And they knew which image we'd want them to use most. They knew it was going to be Garuda. You've reunited with Masayoshi Soken for the game. What made him the right choice? Do I even need to read the answer for this? I've been making games with Soken for years now. He's the composer who best understands not only what I, but our director Hiroshi Takai and creative director Kazutoyo Mehiro imagine as the right choice of a soundscape for a Final Fantasy game. No question about that. Easy. Of course, the most important factor is that his musical style inherits a lot from Nobuo Uematsu, the father of Final Fantasy music. He's always striving to follow in his master's footstep. I think a lot of us like to say that Soken and Uematsu, while they do have similarities, are distinctly different composers. And Soken doesn't have to follow in his master's footstep. He is his own master at this point. We're curious to see who he's going to rise up through the ranks, whose music we're going to be appreciating next that, he taught, and then they become their own thing. I think that's the most exciting thing about Final Fantasy's history with composers, or Square Enix's even, across the various titles and franchises that they have, is they've always kind of risen them to prominence in a lot of ways. Very, very noteworthy, very distinct. And even when they borrow from each other or take inspiration from Uematsu, they just do so many good things that you could say, that's that composer. And I love it. So, Soken, I get the respect in that statement, but you're your own master. Don't forget it. Finally, do you have a message you'd like to share with the fans? Man, that was so short. I know I've kept you all waiting for a long time, but it's a great relief to finally be able to bring you the latest information about Final Fantasy XVI. We plan to share some more details about the world and story sometime this autumn, but I hope the latest trailer and media interviews can keep your imaginations racing until then. So this autumn, probably Tokyo Game Show. I think most of us probably predicted Tokyo Game Show would be the next time we heard from Final Fantasy XVI, and specifically world and story. So maybe they'll do some gameplay stuff. Again, I want them to talk about that support system, but that seems to be the focus at Tokyo Game Show. The whole development team, helmed by our director Hiroshi Takai, is pulling together to make the game the best it can be, so please look forward to it. There's the classic line. And that is the first of, like I said, what is probably many interviews regarding Final Fantasy XVI, and you know it. We'll be talking about every single one of them here on the channel. So if you want to stay up to date on Final Fantasy 16 related stuff, be sure to hit the subscribe button, like this video, comment on it, let me know what your thoughts are on this initial interview, and do so with all the follow-up ones as well. Anyway, I'll see you on the next video, and until then, take care.